Hey guys, Luke on Sean's channel. Today I'm really excited to bring you guys a new deck. This is Lightsworn Shaddolls. Now, I claim it to be Lightsworn Shaddolls, but honestly this has a bunch of different archetypes in it. It's essentially a mill deck, but Lightsworn Shaddolls are kind of like the main focus, and that's what I'm going to be naming the deck therefore. This deck is really cool because it takes advantage of all the summoning mechanics. We are able to synchro, exese, fuse, and even link in this deck. I think it's a nice balance. I will say I'm missing a few cards from this deck, but I'm still going to be like explaining it like as if I have all those cards. All I'm missing is one or two. But let's not beat around the bush. Let's just get straight into Lightsworn Shaddolls. Kicking things off, we run the new MVP of Lightsworn. We are of course talking about Weiss Lightsworn Archfiend. This guy is really good. It's a great complement to the deck, most just because with Lightsworn you do tend to draw into cards you really don't want to see in your hand, such as cards like Felis and Wulf. You don't want them in your hand at all. You want them to be in your deck, so when you mill them, they're able to special summon themselves out. So that was one problem with Lightsworn. They can brick really easily, but Weiss is a good way to kind of unbrick your hand. What Weiss does is he has the effect in hand that you can place one other Lightsworn card from your hand on top of the deck, special summon this card from your hand, then send top two cards from your deck to the graveyard. This is really good when you're pairing Weiss with Wulf in your hand. You're able to reveal the Wulf, put on the top of your deck, special summon Weiss, then mill the top two, Wulf being part of that top two, so it's able to special summon itself out, which is absolutely great for starting off your combos. This card also has the effect that if this card is sent from deck to the graveyard, you can target one Lightsworn monster in your graveyard except for itself and then special summon it. This can be great because it's a good way of recycling materials for your further exes or synchro plays. Not only that, since he's level 4 tuner, he's definitely very important for the deck. I definitely recommend you guys running it at 3 copies in the build. Next up, 3 copies of Lightsworn Dragonling. This is another recent enough card that I definitely think needs to be run at 3 copies in the deck. If you have a Lightsworn monster in your graveyard, you're able to special summon this card from your hand, and then if this card is special summoned, you can send one Lightsworn card from your deck to the graveyard except for Lightsworn Dragonling. So this is very good at being an extender on the field while also dumping even more cards such as your Felis or your Wulf to get into the graveyard in order to get even more bodies on the field. But not only that, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one dragon monster with 3000 attack and 2600 defense from your deck to your hand, which of course is either one of your Judgment Dragon or your Punishment Dragon, depending on which one you prefer to play. But I wanted to make this a 60 card deck, so we run both of them. So you definitely are spoiled for choice. In case you have one in your hand, you're able to search the other. Now I only have 2 copies of Wulf. I would recommend you play 3 copies, but I just don't have the 3rd copy with me. What I'm using is a 3rd copy of Felis instead in order to kind of fill out the gap. But if you guys are able to run 3 copies, I definitely recommend it. But definitely you want to be running 5 of the bricky sort of Lightsworn monsters. So what I mean by that is run a certain ratio where you have a mixture of 5 of these guys. So if you want to run 2 Wulf and 3 Felis, that's fine. I definitely think that 3 Wulf and 2 Felis is definitely a good bit better. But to each their own. Any way that you have it, it's going to be fine. Wulf might be a little bit better just because he has 2100 attack. So if we're going in for damage, we definitely want to have Wulf. He's just a stronger monster, but there are arguments to be made for both of them. They're both level 4, which is great for Xyz plays in Minerva, but also great for synchro plays as well, because Felis is actually a tuner. But considering that Weiss is also a tuner, that's why we want to like mainly focus on Wulf. But either way, we're able to go into our synchro plays or Xyz plays using these guys. I think 3 Wulf and 2 Felis is better, but this is the ratio I'm working with right now because these are only cards I have at my disposal. But definitely recommend some variation of that ratio. Rounding off the Lightsworn monsters, we run 1 copy of Judgment Dragon and 1 copy of Punishment Dragon. For those of you who are fans of Edison format, you guys already know what Judgment Dragon does. He cannot be normal summon / set. You can just special summon him from your hand by having 4 Lightsworn monsters with different names in the graveyard, and he can't be special summoned other ways. He has the effect that you can pay 1000 life points and destroy all other cards in the field, which is a really good board wipe. But we have a few other board wipes in this deck as well. So Judgment Dragon isn't your only way to kind of get a similar effect off that. So Judgment Dragon isn't your only way to board wipe. But not only that, during the end phase of Judgment Dragon's face on your field, you can send top 4 cards from your deck to the graveyard. Punishment Dragon is similar yet the opposite of Judgment Dragon. He can only be special summoned when you have 4 or more banished Lightsworn monsters with different names. So rather than having them in your graveyard, if they're banished, you're able to go for a Punishment Dragon play instead of Judgment Dragon. Punishment Dragon may be a little bit better because he actually has a quick effect that once per turn you can pay 1000 life points, shuffle into the deck all cards in the graveyards and all face-up banished cards except Lightsworn monsters. This is very, very good because with Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, your graveyard is essentially your second hand. So if you're able to shuffle in all of your opponent's resources from their graveyard into the deck, then they don't really have as much easy access to some of their cards anymore. So that's a good way, depending on the matchup, of really messing with your opponent. But that's not all Punishment Dragon does. It also has the effect that once per turn, if your Lightsworn monster's effect is activated, you can send top 4 cards from your deck to the graveyard. So you don't have to wait for the end phase like Judgment Dragon. If you get Wulf to pop off, you're able to activate Punishment Dragon and then mill 4, which could extend your plays even more. So that rounds off the Lightsworn monsters. Going into the Shaddolls now, we run 1 copy of Shaddoll Beast. Now pretty much with all Shaddoll monsters, they all have 2 effects. One's a flip effect and the other is an effect that if they're sent to the graveyard by card effect, they get another effect. But you can only activate once per turn, so I'll try to just breeze through what all these guys do. Beast, if he's flipped, you're able to draw 2 cards and discard 1. But if he's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you're able to draw a card. I like to run a fair amount of Shaddoll monster with different names in the deck, just because we like to have a variation on what each of their effects are able to do while they're into the graveyard. But not only that, I think it's important to have a good few different Shaddoll names, because if we're running it with some of our tier monsters and some of our other millers, we're able to get some crazy effects. So Beast is no exception to that. I also like to run 2 copies of Squamata. The one complaint I'll have about this deck is that it can be very hard to get the specific cards you want into the graveyard, but Squamata is able to do that very well, because if you send to the graveyard by card effect, you're able to send 1 Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard. This is great because that says Shaddoll cards, so you can send any of your Shaddoll monsters to get their effects, or even if you're able to recycle some of your Shaddoll spell or trap cards, such as your Shaddoll Fusion or Schism, then I definitely recommend you guys running Squamata at 2. Shaddoll Dragon is our spell and trap card removal. If you send to the graveyard by card effect, you can target 1 spell trap card in the field and destroy it, or if he's flipped up, you can target 1 card your opponent controls, return to the hand. Hedgehog is great. He has a flip effect that you can add 1 Shaddoll spell trap from your deck to your hand, or if he's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can add 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck to the hand. Falco, I know a lot of people don't like, but I actually am a big fan of Falco. If you want to change this out with another copy of Beast, absolutely no problem at all. His flip effect is that you can target 1 Shaddoll monster in your graveyard except for Shaddoll Falco, and then special summon it in face down defense position. But if he's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon him in face down defense. 1 copy of Reeshaddoll Wendi. Reeshaddoll Wendi still counts as a Shaddoll monster, so you don't need to worry about that when you're using it as fusion material. Her flip effect and graveyard effect are essentially the same, so depending where she is in the game, you still get the same effect, that you're able to special summon a Shaddoll monster from your deck onto the field in face down defense position. So I definitely think Wendi is definitely worth the run. 1 copy of Naelshaddoll Ariel. Ariel is great. Her flip effect is that you can target 1 banished Shaddoll monster and then special summon it face up or face down. This can be good if we get some of our like fusion monsters banished off of our opponent's card effects, so it's good to just kind of like bring them back out onto the field, especially if you're dealing with like a Winda or a Construct. It's good to either like get some of our floodgates back onto the field. But not only that, if Ariel is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can target 3 cards in either graveyard and just banish them. So that's really, really good at cutting off your opponent from some of the materials that they might be able to recycle from the grave. And with that, that rounds off the Shaddoll monsters. This is a mill deck, so of course, what are mill decks anymore if we're not running a Horus engine? Definitely run 3 copies of Imsety. The Horus engine is really, really good, and it stays consistent with Imsety, because what you're able to do with Imsety is you're able to send 2 cards, including itself, from your hand to the graveyard in order to search your King Sarcophagus. King Sarcophagus is a crazy card that we also run at 3 in the deck, because what King Sarcophagus is able to do is that it's able to send a bunch of Horus monsters from deck to the graveyard for the amount of discards that we pay to activate that effect, and you can activate that effect up to 4 times per turn. Not only that, pretty much all of your Horus monsters have like an inherent summon effect that when they're in the graveyard, you're able to special summon them onto your field. And considering that they are like high levels, they're all level 8, you're able to go into some really crazy rank 8 plays. And we run a lot of rank 8 monsters in this build that can either serve as a negate, a board wipe, wipe or even milling further into the deck. So I definitely recommend you guys run Imsety, Glory of the Horus at 3 copies in the deck. I also like to run 1 copy of Blessing of Horus and 1 copy of Guidance of Horus. These guys are great. I don't really care too much about their other effects. Although they are powerful monsters, what really matters is that there are other Horus names that we're able to get into the graveyard, that we're able to special summon them out when we have King Sarcophagus on the field, so that we're able to go for a rank play. So I definitely recommend you guys run 1 copy of each, and that rounds off the Horus monsters. 3 copies of the Bystial Lubellion. We pretty much don't run any hand traps in this deck. The only hand traps we have are in the form of bestial monsters, and the Bystial Lubellion is a great way that we're able to pitch it from our hand in order to search for a bestial monster. But not only that, the Bystial Lubellion is also really great at bringing itself out if you tribute 1 level 6 or higher Dark Dragon monster, which of course will be one of your bestials. We're also able to use this effect in order to get branded regained onto the field, which is really good because considering that this deck mills a lot and also banishes from time to time, what we're able to do is use the branded regains in order to sort of recycle those materials so that we don't actually deck ourselves out. But also bestials are really important to run in this deck because we also run a few synchro monsters that can do with some high level materials in order to go into them. So I definitely recommend you guys run 3 copies of the Bystial Lubellion. Going into the big 3 of bestial monsters, I will run 1 copy of Baldrake, 1 Druiswurm, and 1 Magnamhut. I don't run Sarenator in this build just because the bestials aren't like the main focus of this deck. I wanted to try keep this to Shaddolls and Lightsworns as much as I can, but I think the bestials are just too good of a card for us to like ignore them. I think they are really good at serving their purpose in this deck. Magnamhut's able to search us any dragon, and considering that we run a bunch of dragons with Punishment Dragon, Judgment Dragon, and even Dragonling, we're able to search a lot of our Lightsworn stuff, so I definitely recommend you run them at that. But not only that, since we run a good few level 4 tuners, and these guys are level 6 dragon monsters, we're able to actually synchro summon into bestial this pattern, no problem at all. So I definitely recommend you run your bestials at this ratio right here. Going into some tier stuff, 1 copy of Scheiren, 1 copy of Havnis, and 1 copy of Merrli. These guys are exclusively for fusion summoning into our Shaddoll monsters, even more specifically into our Winda. So pretty much all of these guys have the same effect, that if they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you're able to use it and another monster in order to fusion summon a monster, shuffling these materials into the deck. That was basically the gimmick of Tearlaments, if you guys aren't really familiar. So I find that it's really good to run these guys in the deck because Winda is one of our MVPs of Shaddolls, and if we're able to go into Winda as quickly as possible, we can really shut down our opponent and impress them as much as we can. But not only that, they're also very good because if they are special summoned onto the field, you're able to mill the deck for 3 more cards, which they all pretty much have that effect as well. So I think these guys definitely serve their purpose very well in this deck. They definitely give it a good compliment, so I definitely recommend you guys run it. I know probably a bunch of you are sick of seeing tier cards by now, but honestly these guys complement the deck really well, and I definitely recommend you guys run them. And speaking of some tier cards some people are sick of seeing, we run 1 copy of Keldo and 1 copy of Mudora. These are great if we need to recycle resources or if we're able to interrupt our opponent if they are a graveyard reliant deck. These guys both have similar effects, that you're able to quick effect, banish this card from the graveyard, then target up to 3 cards in any of the graveyards and then shuffle them back into the deck, which I find are really good considering that this is a quick effect. It's a good interruption for our opponent, but also it's good at recycling our own resources so we don't end up decking ourselves out. Then the final monster of this deck, Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon. I just really like this card, to be quite honest with you. I think he's really good. He serves a good purpose in this deck because, as I said earlier, Judgment Dragon is the only way that we can board wipe. Chaos Emperor is another way for us to do that. He can only be special summoned from your hand or extra deck by banishing a light and a dark monster from your graveyard. And then once per turn, you can pay half your life points and send as many cards you control as possible to the graveyard, except for cards in the extra monster zone. And if you do, send cards your opponent controls to the graveyard up to the number of cards sent to your graveyard. Then inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each card sent to the graveyard by this card's effect, which I think is just a really cool board wipe. Not only for the fact that it's able to wipe your opponent's field, but also if we're having a bunch of Shaddoll monsters on the field and then we're able to send them to the graveyard, we can get some like pretty powerful effects off that as well. So usually when this card pops off, we're not leaving ourselves short. So we definitely recommend recommend you guys play it. I also just think it's a lot of fun, but if you guys wanted to trade it out for something else, that's no problem either. I'm just a big fan of this card. Going into the spells now, we run 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade. It's an old card, so it is not once per turn, funnily enough. Simply reads, send the top 3 cards from deck to the graveyard, then add 1 level 4 lower Lightsworn monster from deck to the hand. Basically can search us pretty much any of our Lightsworn monsters, and also mill for some more powerful effects if we get the right hits. It's really good at searching Weiss, but if you already have Weiss in your hand and you're looking for a Lightsworn monster in order to get into your hand, so you can truly activate his effects, what you're able to do is even use Charge, search Wulf, and then you can use Wife, put Wulf in the top, special Weiss, mill Wulf, bring Wulf out, and then you have either an XZ summon right there or a synchro play. So we definitely recommend you guys run 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade. 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. This is the fusion card for Shaddolls. I think it's really important you run out 3 copies. We like to see this in our hand as often as possible. It's pretty much just a regular fusion card, nothing too special about it, except for the fact that if your opponent controls a monster that was special from the X deck, you can use monsters from your deck as fusion material, which is just really powerful. This is one of the OGs for like using material from deck in order to special summon a fusion monster. We have cards like Branded Fusion and even Fusion Destiny do pretty much the same, but Shaddoll Fusion is one of my favorite. It goes into one of our many powerful Shaddoll Fusion monsters such as Construct, Winda, and Apkalone. So I definitely recommend running it at 3 copies in the deck. 3 copies of King Sarcophagus. This is the card we search off of Imsety. As I said, this is an absolutely crazy card. It's a continuous spell, so it stays on the field when you activate it, and this is the card you need on field in order for your Horus monster to special summon themselves from the graveyard for their inherit summon. But as I mentioned earlier, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard and send 1 Horus monster from your deck to the graveyard, and you can use this effect of King Sarcophagus up to 4 times per turn, which is absolutely insane. All we need most of the time is just sending 2 Horus monsters into the graveyard in order to bring them both out and go for a rank 8 plays. But if we're able to extend it even further, then that's also always great to see too. So definitely recommend running 3 copies of King Sarcophagus. 1 copy of Branded Regained. We're able to bring this down to the field because of the Bystial Lubellion, and I definitely think it's worth the run. It's a good way of recycling some of our banished material in order to get it into the deck again, then draw a card. Basically saves us from decking out most of the time, so definitely recommend you guys running a 1 copy in the deck. 1 copy of Chaos Space. I think this is the must to run. It's limited right now, so we can only run a 1 copy. Pretty much all of our deck consists of either light or dark monsters, so it's very easy that we have Chaos Space live pretty much all the time. You can send 1 light or dark monster from your hand to the graveyard and add 1 light or dark monster that cannot be normal summoned / step from your deck to your hand with a level from 4 to 8 and with a different attribute from that monster. Not only that, you can banish this card from the graveyard and target 1 of your banished light or dark monsters that cannot be normal summoned as set and place that monster on the bottom of the deck and then draw 1 card. Of course, this was abused a lot in Dragonling, but we can actually take advantage of it in this deck too, so I definitely recommend you running it at 1 copy in the deck. Foolish Burial, of course, I think it goes without saying. Most of our monsters have effects when they're in the graveyard, so if we're able to get them in there as quick as possible, we definitely want a card that can do that. So 1 copy in this deck. Now, as you guys can probably tell, this is of course a grass deck. The deck is 60 cards, so of course we're running that grass looks greener. For those of you who don't know what grass does, you are very lucky, but I'll explain to you now. If you have more cards in your deck than your opponent does, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard so that you have the same number of cards in your deck as your opponent. And yes, that is sending cards from your deck to the graveyard. So not only does your Shaddoll monsters have great effects when they're sent to the graveyard by card effect with grass that you can pretty much chain to each other depending on how much you mill, but also a lot of your Lightsworn monsters, as we previously went over, have some great effects in the graveyard as well. So if we're able to activate grass and then mill our deck for a bunch of stuff, we're able to get some great effects, and we're able to even spam the board in some cases. And even what we're able to do, if we are able to mill some of our tier cards, we're able to activate their effects in order to fuse into a Winda, which can be great, but I will say just be careful of your chaining because some of the monster effects special summon from the graveyard. So make sure when you're activating your chains, just be careful of the order because you don't want to Winda yourself into only summoning 1 monster. Of course, grass is limited, so we can run out 1 in this deck, but a good way that we're able to search it most of the time is with the 2 copies of Triple Tactics Trust. Trust is great because if your opponent activates a monster effect during your turn, you're able to either set a normal spell trap directly from your deck, i.e. your grass, or if your opponent controls a monster, you're able to add that card to your hand, which is just absolutely great. The main reason we run Trust in this deck is mostly for grass. It can still search a bunch of other great cards, such as your Lightsworn Aegis, or your Charge of the Light Brigade, or even your Shaddoll Fusion as well. So there's a lot of cards that you can search off of Thrust, but definitely the main reason why we run it is so we can search that grass looks greener. Rounding off the spells, 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. Droplet is great. It sends any number of cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, and you could choose that many effect monster your opponent controls. Until the end of this turn, their attack is halved and their effects are negated. Your opponent can't respond to this card depending on what you send to the graveyard. So if you send monster cards to the graveyard or activate Droplet, they can't respond with monster effects. If you send spells in order to activate Droplet, they can't respond with spells and stuff like that. So it's definitely really good for that aspect. But one of the parts that make it really good in this deck is that it specifically says that it sends any number of other cards. So you're actually sending cards to the graveyard, i.e. you're sending your monsters to the graveyard to activate the effect of Droplet, and since they're sent, they are able to get their effects. So I definitely recommend running 3 copies of Droplet to round off the spells in this deck. Going into the traps now, 1 copy of Shaddoll Schism. This is basically the Miracle Fusion of Shaddolls in the form of a continuous trap. During the main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Then you can send to the graveyard 1 monster your opponent controls with the same attribute as that fusion summoned monster, which is really great considering that there's a lot of dark decks that are like topping events such as Duel and stuff like that. If we're able to use Schism in order to bring out Wendi, then your opponent has to send a dark monster to their graveyard, which can sometimes be really tricky to play around. So I definitely recommend you guys running that 1 copy in this deck. We definitely don't like seeing Schism like end up in the graveyard, so if we accidentally mill it, some cards that we're able to revive it back with is with the likes of Shaddoll Core. Core is fine, it's basically a trap monster, but it has another hidden effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target 1 Shaddoll spell trapped in your graveyard, except for Core, and add it to your hand. So this of course is definitely really good at getting Schism back to our hand, but not only that, we can also get Shaddoll Fusion back to our hand as well if we have that in the graveyard too. Final card of the 60 card deck, we run 1 copy of Lightsworn Aegis. Simply put, you can target face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of Lightsworn monsters you control, negate their effects until the end of this turn. But if this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, you can set this card, which is pretty powerful, but I will be honest, most of the time we don't have too many Lightsworn monsters onto the field. If we do, we mostly have them as material for some of our other monsters. But on the off chance that you're able to set up your Minervas and have this on the field as well, then you are able to just have like a mini imperm if you want for your back row. So I still think this is definitely worth the run, especially because of that recursion effect that if you send it to the graveyard, it's able to just reset itself. So I definitely think it's a good way to round off the deck. Going on to the extra deck now, 2 copies of Naelshaddoll Construct. Construct is an amazing card. I definitely think you should run that too. You need 1 Shaddoll monster and 1 light monster in order to go into her. If she's special summoned, you can send 1 Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard, which is great because if you're sending one of your monsters, you're able to get one of their effects, or if you want to even send your core in order to get a spell card, or if you want to send core to get one of your other Shaddoll spell traps from the graveyard back to your hand, that's another thing that you can do with it too. But she also has a very good battle effect. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a special summoned monster, you can just destroy that monster. So it's really good at removing some problematic cards. Not only that, she has a good recycling as well, because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Shaddoll spell trap in your graveyard and just add it to your hand. Construct is one of the best Shaddoll cards, and it still remains one of the deck's best boss monsters. So I definitely recommend you guys running it at 2 copies in the build. 2 copies of Wendi. Wendi takes 1 Shaddoll monster, 1 dark monster in order to fuse into her, which is absolutely fine because all the tier monsters that we run in the main deck are dark, so all you need is 1 of your tier monsters and then 1 Shaddoll monster in order to go into her very easily after her effects. But not only that, she cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so she can be a bit hard to out because she also acts as a floodgate that each player can only special summon 1 monster per turn while this card is face up on the field, which can actually be very problematic for your opponent, considering that pretty much all decks now, they all combo off and summon a bunch of monsters in order to go into their plays. Locking your opponent down and oppressing them that they can only summon once while Wendi's face up on the field can definitely interrupt their plans big time. Not only that, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Shaddoll spell trap in the graveyard and add to your hand, much like Construct. Wendi is an absolute beast. I definitely recommend you guys running her at 2 copies in the deck. We run 2 copies of Naelshaddoll Apollon. It takes 2 Shaddoll monsters with different attributes in order to go into her, so I understand if you guys want to cut her down to 1, that's absolutely fine. But keep in mind, it's not only the dark Shadolls and then the the Ariel and the Wendi in the deck. You also have Construct as a different Shaddoll monster with a different attribute than Dark. So you can go in App Cologne a lot easier than you might think. She has the effect that she cannot be destroyed by battle, and then you can only use each of the following effects of her once per turn. This card is special summon, you can target one face-up card in the field and just negate its effects. Or if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one Shaddoll card from your deck or graveyard to your hand and then discard one card, which is absolutely great. I definitely think App Cologne is really good. The fact that I can't be destroyed by battle can be really problematic to our opponent. If we need to buy ourselves some more time, that can come in really handy. But also the fact that when she's summoned out, she could just like straight up negate a card on the field. Not restricted to a monster, you can actually just negate a face-up spell trap card on the field is really powerful. So definitely recommend you guys running her at 2 copies in this deck. If you want to cut her down to 1, that's absolutely fine too, but I think 2 is very strong. Going to synchros now, 1 copy of Minerva. Minerva is a synchro 8 monster with some powerful effects, especially because we're running the Lightsworn package. Lightsworn monsters you control cannot be banished by card effects, and also you can use each of the following effects of Minerva once per turn. If this card is synchro summoned, you can send Lightsworn monsters with different types from your deck to the graveyard up to the number of Lightsworn monsters used as material for this card summon, which is really great because most of the time we use Wulf and Weiss in order to go into Minerva, so we're able to send two monsters directly from our deck to the graveyard, which is great for some good advantage. But not only that, you can banish up to 4 Lightsworn monsters from your graveyard, and then you can send that many cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. This is great for 2 reasons. Not only is it a good way for us to mill and get some further plays off of that, but if we're able to banish a bunch of our Lightsworn monsters from the graveyard and get them into the banishment zone, that's a good way of setting up our punishment dragon. So I definitely recommend you guys run Minerva at 1 copy in the deck. 1 copy of Bystial Dispatter. Dispatter you guys probably already know about. It's one of the most insane synchro monsters that's out there right now. You can target 1 banished light or dark monster, and then you can special summon it to your field. Not only that, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can quick effect, target 1 banished card and shuffle it into the deck. And then if you shuffle it into your deck, you can destroy that monster, or if you shuffle it into your opponent's deck, you can negate that activated effect, which is really good interruption. I definitely recommend you run Bystial Dispatter at 1 in this deck. Honestly, it's a very powerful card, and it's the reason you run the Bystials in the deck anyways. I definitely think it's worth a run. 1 copy of Chaos Angel. 1 copy of Chaos Angel. I of course don't have this card right now, but it's definitely essential to be running in this deck. For its synchro summon, you can treat 1 light or dark monster you control as a tuner if you don't have your tuners in play. But it's also a level 10 monster, so we can easily go into it. And if this card is special summoned, you can target 1 card in the field and just banish it, which is absolutely crazy. But also, this card gains these effects based on the original attributes of materials used for its synchro summon. Now, considering that we run a lot of both light and dark monsters, you're able to get both of these effects live, which is really great. But if you can only get one or the other, it's still very good as well. So if you use light monsters in order to go into Chaos Angel, has the effect that synchro monsters you control are unaffected by monster effects activated by your opponent. But also if you use dark monsters in order to go into her, monsters you control cannot be destroyed in battle. So it can be really good at just making big problems for your opponents. Not only that, it has a really high attack of 3500, so Chaos Angel can be an absolute beast on the field as well, especially during the battle phase. So I definitely recommend you guys running it at 1 copy in the deck. Going into XZs now, 1 copy of Minerva. Minerva is great. She just needs 2 level 4 monsters in order to go into her. She has the effect that you can attach 1 material from this card, send top 3 cards from the deck to the graveyard. Then you can draw cards equal to the number of Lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this effect. This is great because we actually do have a bunch of Lightsworn monsters in the deck, so that we're able to send them into the graveyard. Not only do we get their effects while they're in the graveyard, but also we can draw cards equal to the number that we send. So that's great enough as is. But not only that, if this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can send the top 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard, and then you can destroy cards in the field up to the number of Lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this effect. So it's also good removal if we get lucky with our mill. So definitely recommend Minerva running at 1 copy in the deck. I know the Horus engine might look a little small for the amount of rank 8 monsters I'm about to show you, but I still think that they're important to run all of them, just because you never know what the situation is going to be when you're going to be activating them and bringing them onto the field. So I like to run the Zombie Vampire. I think it's great for like like milling the decks and getting some great advantage off some of the other cards that have graveyard effects. Because what a zombie vampire does is that you're able to detach one material from this card, and then each player sends top 4 cards from the deck to the graveyard. Then if any monster was sent to the graveyard by this effect, you're able to special summon one of those monsters to your field. And that's not only monsters that you send to the graveyard, but you can also special summon a monster that your opponent may have milled as well. But not only is that great to get another body onto the field, because you're milling 8 cards essentially, you're probably going to hit a monster, but also the fact that since we're milling further into the deck, we can get a bunch of advantage from some of our own monsters too. So I definitely think the zombie vampire is really good at running at 1 in this deck. I like to run 1 copy of number 38 Hope Harbinger. This can be great because if we're trying to go for like a more oppressive sort of gameplay, Hope Harbinger is a really good spell card in the gate, which can be really good depending on the matchup. And if you know your opponent has a very important spell card that they want to activate, you can save Hope Harbinger for that negation specifically. So I definitely recommend running number 38 in this deck. And speaking of negates, we run number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord, another monster that you bring out by ranking your Horus monsters, but rather than negating a spell card, it negates a monster effect. So I definitely recommend you guys running number 90 in this build. And then the final Xyz we run is Grunix Eternity. This is the final way that we're able to completely board wipe our opponent, because if you go into Grunix Eternity, if this card is Xyz summoned, you can destroy all monsters on the field. That's pretty much the only reason we run him. If we just really want a board wipe and all we have is the Horus engine in order to go for it, Grunix Eternity can be a really good way of catching your opponent off guard with that. And then finally, rounding off the deck, 1 copy of SP Little Knight, because it's the end of 2024. Everyone has SP Little Knight at this stage. She's just a very powerful card. There's no reason not to run it. It's the last card of the deck, so it might seem a little bit weird that we're running SP and not IP as well. But if you guys want to cut out 1 copy of App Cologne in order to fit in IP Masquerena, and then you might be able to catch your opponent off guard in order to go for your SP Little Knight, like a play like that, that's absolutely fine. But I quite like running more Shaddolls in this deck just because I really do like Shaddolls, and I want to try keep this deck as focused as I possibly can on both Shaddolls and Lightsworn. So I didn't want to cut as many corners with those cards either. So it really depends on your preference, but I think SP Little Knight is just really powerful enough on her own. Honestly, if you pretty much brick with this build and you just have 2 monsters on the field, you're able to just link easily into SP Little Knight, and that's a pretty decent disruption right there. So I definitely recommend running SP Little Knight to round off this deck. So that does it for the deck. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really happy with the way this deck turned out. I think this deck is a lot of fun. If you guys want to try it, I definitely recommend you guys should do it and let me know how you guys get on. It can be quite tricky to get your head around all of the different engines we run in this build. I know it can be a bit of a cluster considering the amount of different archetypes, but I think that they complement each other well enough that the deck can actually do some really incredible things. So I definitely think you guys should test it out and let me know what you got on. If you guys would like to build this deck, we actually have some affiliate links in the description. So if you guys use that, you're directly supporting the channel to help us bring you guys all this content. And also it's great because it can really motivate us to continue making profiles like this and coming up with more deck ideas that you guys should try out too. Also, if you guys would like to consider becoming a member, that would be great. Also, it's just a good way to get early access to some of these videos, and it definitely supports the channel, so please be sure that you guys can consider that too. But if you guys can support us any other way, just be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the videos. Sean and I definitely really appreciate it because we guys love making these videos. We like to continue to do so. So yeah, be sure to try this deck out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.